Hello and welcome into the Knicks-Verse. My name is George, and if this is your first time here or you've been here before and have actually not subscribed yet, now's the time to do it. We've actually surpassed 6,000 subscribers, and I want to thank each and every one of you for the support on this channel. It's been wonderful and humbling. I really am, I'm very humbled by all the support and the feedback that I get, the good and the bad. Actually, the bad actually helps me get better, and the good helps me keep going. So I really appreciate all of that. It's been an odd summer. I haven't recorded a video, I believe, in about 2 weeks. I thought there was going to be some news to report on, the Donovan Mitchell news, and there really hasn't been anything major. So I was kind of just in a wait-and-see kind of mode. But today, a few things came out. Actually, let's get to it. You can see here, Michael Scotto of Hoops Hype. He tweeted this out. He put an article out today where sources, he says, the Lakers, Knicks, and Jazz discussed a 3-team trade with Donovan Mitchell landing in New York, Patrick Beverley, and another key Jazz player to the Lakers. Russell Westbrook on the move, and draft picks to Utah. More details on Hoops Hype. I'm going to get into this, and I'm also going to talk about Tony Jones from The Athletic, who was interviewed on ESPN 700. A radio station. He talked about the latest on what's happening with Donovan Mitchell and how far apart the Knicks and the Jazz are. So I'll recap all of that, and then I'm going to give you my thoughts about whether Leon Rose should blink and actually bid against himself. We'll talk about that. But here, let's get to this thing. So here in Hoops Hype, he said, according to multiple NBA executives who've spoken to the Jazz about trading for Donovan Mitchell, Utah is seeking as many draft picks as possible and isn't prioritizing win-now players. Well, we kind of already knew that, but it reinforces that it's all about the picks for Danny Ainge. And it's interesting because it was something else that popped up in Tony Jones' interview where he talked about Quentin Grimes being the point of difficulty in this deal. Apparently the Knicks don't want to give him up, and apparently the Jazz don't want to make a deal without him involved. But I'll get into that in a little bit. So here, one thing they also talk about here, Utah's looking to land a bigger haul for Mitchell than the Rudy Gobert trade that netted 4 first-round picks and 2022 first-rounder Walker Kessler, which so basically it's like 5 first-round picks from Minnesota. There's problems with that expectation, and I'll get into that. Basically, I believe it's unrealistic because the market bears what the market bears, and the Knicks have the picks, the Knicks have the players, no one else does. That's just the fact, the reality of life. Tony goes into talking about that maybe, at some point Utah will just have to go into the season with Donovan on the team and maybe have to wait until the trade deadline, until someone meets their price threshold, or maybe even wait an entire year. That would be a tragic mistake for the Utah Jazz, and I'll get into that in a little bit as well. I've just been hearing so many different viewpoints about all of this stuff. And at the end of the day, what's really happening is Leon knows where he's at, and Danny doesn't like where he's at. Danny's trying to get Leon to cough up more. And apparently, so is the rest of the media. The rest of the media wants Leon to make a mistake because they want something to write about, and they want to be able to get back to the Knicks LOL BS that we've had to endure. Well, guess what? We don't have to do it. The Knicks do not have to make this trade. Remember this. The Knicks do not have to make this trade. Contrary to everything everyone else has said, that the Knicks have to make this trade, I'm telling you guys right now, the Knicks do not have to make this trade. And I will explain why in a little bit. Get to this here. So the New York Knicks have the necessary draft pick compensation to acquire Mitchell, including a maximum of 8 first-round picks over the next 7 years that they can include. However, New York has been reluctant to give up a treasure chest of draft picks thus far, with trade talks stalling over the past few weeks. Utah and New York have haggled over the number of picks, whether they'd be protected or not, young assets like Obi Toppin, Emmanuel Quickley, and Quentin Grimes, and which salary filler players will be used to get the deal done. Now, there's also discussion of a 3-team trade. So this is part of that. Despite the haggling back and forth, New York remains the presumptive favorite to land Mitchell should Utah ultimately trade him. The Knicks have been searching to land a star in the Leon Rose era, and Mitchell would fill that void while entering the prime of his career to mesh well with New York's current nucleus. Well, there wouldn't be much of a nucleus if the Knicks trade them all away for him, or if they trade too many draft picks, how are they going to acquire the next star? Because Donovan Mitchell does not make the New York Knicks a contender. It doesn't. Just the way Rudy Gobert does not make Minnesota Timberwolves a contender. I don't care what anybody says. I really don't care what anyone else says about that. The Timberwolves will not get past. I'd be surprised if they got past the second round, honestly. They may not get past the first round. They may not. In fact, here's proof. 5 years, Utah Jazz in the playoffs with Donovan Mitchell and Rudy Gobert together. The first year they were together, they got to the second round, lost in the second round. The next year, in 2019, lost in the first round. In 2020, lost in the first round. In 2021, lost in the second round. In 2022, lost in the first round. Now, yes, is Cat a more impactful player all around than Donovan Mitchell? I would say yes. He's just, his size makes him that. But, Donovan's playoff numbers are insane. I believe he is 7th or 8th in all-time career playoff scoring. So, Cat's nowhere near there. Cat's not much of a defender either. And Donovan isn't either, but certainly Cat isn't. Can Anthony Edwards step up and become that kind of all-star type player next year? It's possible. But there's too many variables there. I do not believe that adding Rudy Gobert is really going to change much for Minnesota. Now, the reason that Minnesota did that trade is because, who wants to go play for Minnesota? Let's be honest. Who wants to do that? Unless you're drafted there and you're forced to play there, and once you're there, you fall in love with the environment and you're given a certain prominence on that team. Okay, maybe you do like it there, but you're not going to go there if you're already playing in LA, or you're playing in Miami, or you're playing in New York or Boston or wherever. It's other places that even Indiana. Are you going to go to Minnesota from Indiana? Are you going to choose to? No. So that's why the Minnesota Timberwolves had to overpay. They didn't have to either. I think they made a huge mistake. In fact, Sports Illustrated, right after the trade was made, they analyzed the trade, and they gave the Jazz, obviously, they got an A for that trade. They gave Minnesota a C because everyone feels they overpaid. So why does everyone feel that the Knicks need to overpay? Why? Donovan's not going to make us an instant contender. It'll make us a playoff team for sure. Is winning 50 games possible with Donovan Mitchell on this team? Yes, it is. I thought 50 games was possible last season. In fact, that's another thing that's really distorted this whole situation. The poor coaching by Tom Thibodeau last season is one of the main, and Julius Randle shitting all over himself and all over the team, basically, and the fans on top of that, making a total fool of himself and devaluing himself and underperforming and making the style of play almost unbearable to watch often. If it weren't for him, taking that big of a backward steps, the Knicks would have probably gotten back into the playoffs, would have won. I projected 53 wins for this team. Now, the Kemba Walker thing did not work, so you pivot. And what did Thibodeau pivot to? Disaster. Alec Burks. Come on, when we have Emmanuel Quickley on this team. There's just too much. Anyway, the point is that the team underperformed last season. So you now added Jalen Brunson as a point guard. Solid. I give that signing a B plus. but he's solid. He's going to be an excellent contributor. His efficiency is tremendous. And he's going to make the other guys on the team better. It's just going to happen. It's going to be the added benefit. Then on top of that, you add Donovan Mitchell to this team. Yeah, defensively, we get hurt a little bit, but we have we have Mitch. We've re-signed him. RJ has made a step up in his ability to guard the toughest players. Did he struggle at times? Yes, he did, but he's willing to do it, and he's only going to get better in that department itself. And then we had Julius Randle, Mr. Slumpy shoulders, didn't get back. So he was definitely a weakness defensively, which is why, honestly, the number one priority for the Knicks offseason should not be, from this moving forward, should not necessarily be getting Donovan Mitchell at whatever price Danny Ainge decides is his threshold. It should be somehow finding a new home for Julius Randle. Now, if the two can come together, that would be a win-win-win all the way around. Let's get to this actually here. So this is what the Knicks Muse tweeted out in response to that article by Mike Scotto, that the Lakers, Knicks, and Jazz reportedly had conversations on a potential 3-team trade. Jazz would get Russell Westbrook, which he would buy out, and draft picks from New York. I believe at this point it would be, I think it's 6 draft picks, 3 or 2 unprotected from the Knicks, 2 unprotected from the Lakers, and 2 or 3 protected. Or maybe it's 7 picks. I'm not sure. But they didn't really get into details on that. Knicks would get Donovan Mitchell, and the Lakers would get Patrick Beverley, Jordan Clarkson, and Bojan Bogdanovic or Malik Beasley. Now, there was another offshoot to this, which NBA Analysis Network put out in response to this article by Scotto. Julius Randle to Los Angeles Lakers. Utah Jazz receive guard Russell Westbrook, the 2023 first-round pick from the Knicks, the 2023 first-round pick, the Dallas pick from the Knicks, the 2025 first-round pick of the Knicks, and I'm assuming those are unprotected, the 2027 first-round pick from the Lakers, and the 2029 first-round pick from the Lakers. So that's a total of 5 first-round picks, 4 unprotected, so it's very similar to the Rudy Gobert, because remember, the 2022 had already been picked for them. So in essence, it's almost equivalent to a protected pick. The Lakers would get Julius Randle and the 4th best three-point shooter in the league, Evan Fournier. Julius can give the Lakers that type of player that has the gravitas, and also at the same time, he will gladly take a tertiary position to LeBron and Unibrow. There's no doubt. Anthony Davis and LeBron James are going to be the top 2 dogs on that team. Julius would very comfortably fit in as the 3rd one. And who knows? This might relax him. He might find peace in his role there and could end up finding a place where he's performing somewhere between what he did last season and what he did in his second-team All-NBA season year, which is really my expectation for him to eventually get back to that. He has all the talent to do it. It's all just up in here and whether he's willing to accept his role. He's had a conflict with that. When he's in conflict, he doesn't perform well. He dogs it, and I don't believe that he could do that on a court with Anthony Davis and LeBron James sharing the court with him. I just don't see him doing that. So I see him performing at a very top level. And then you add Evan Fournier to that, Lakers could get back into contention mode. Could it be enough? I don't know. We'll have to talk about that. But at least they'll be much better than they were last season. They'll be back in the playoffs. Absolutely. And in this scenario, the Knicks get Donovan Mitchell and Jordan Clarkson. So this is interesting because this kind of works all the way around. I mean, we get rid of Randle. We finally get Donovan Mitchell. We give up 2 protected firsts, which is totally fine. And we give up a 3rd. We probably would have to give up another pick in this scenario, I would imagine. I would imagine we'd probably give up another one of the protected picks that we have. Maybe the maybe the Charlotte one. I'm not sure, but it would definitely would cost something like that. I mean, this is a good deal. This is a good deal all the way around because we also benefit from holding on to Grimes, Obi, and IQ. And those three of our young core are incredibly promising. You guys know that I believe Obi is, I believe he can be a 20-10 guy, but definitely at minimum can be a 20 points and 8 rebounds type of guy if he was the starter. I firmly believe that. Quentin Grimes has shown that he is much more than just a 3-and-D player, and he is by far the best perimeter guard, the best defender on the perimeter that we have, and we're going to need that, especially with his size. We're going to need that, especially when you add a Donovan Mitchell to a backcourt that has Brunson. On those nights when one of those two just don't have it, and we need that defensive stopper who can also just light it up from the three-point line, there you go, that's Grimes. And who can do some playmaking, as we saw that he did in Summer League. That was actually the biggest eye-opener. I don't know if it was such an eye-opener for us as Knicks fans, because we watched him all the time. We knew it was in his toolbox. We knew he had that in him, but he really pulled it out even more so in Summer League. I love the way he was feeding Jericho Sims. He was making those passes to the corner when he drove into the lane. He was doing some behind the back, no looks. I mean, fantastic. So, which explains why Utah would covet him. We'll get into that discussion as well, because that has, Tony, he's right there. He covers the Jazz for the Athletic, so he understands what it is that they're expecting. In fact, here we go. So Tony Jones, here we go. This is what he said. He said the Knicks aren't close to meeting Danny Ainge's threshold, his price threshold. In fact, he thinks that Danny Ainge is upset because of the low balling that's been going on. No, sorry, Danny. Oh, Danny's sad. Jesus. Knicks are the only team with the picks package Danny Ainge wants. So he's upset. He's upset that the Knicks aren't willing to be stupid and overpay. Oh, they're not giving me the 7 picks that I want, or 8, whatever it was rumored. I think it was actually 7. Someone came out and said it was 8, and I think it was Mark Stein who came out and said, no, I never heard 8, but I think he said more than 6, so that puts it at 7. That's a lot. It's way too much for a guy who's never been an MVP. He's never been an All-NBA player. Harden, Anthony Davis, these guys were traded. They didn't get traded for this kind of a package that Danny Ainge wants. It's crazy. It's absolute madness. All right, next thing. Knicks have asked the Jazz to take back multiple bad contracts, not just one bad contract. So in this case, it's hard to classify. I don't think Julius is a bad contract per se for the type of performance he can give you. Yes, last year wasn't that, but like we were just saying, if he can do something between, the past 2 seasons, his contract is not a bad contract. Evan Fournier, is that a bad contract for one of the top 3-point shooters in the game? That's also kind of debatable. But we can say in lieu of, on a team that's trying to go young, which is what the Knicks are doing, then yes, those contracts are a little heavy, and we have guys to replace them. We have Obi to replace Julius, and we have Grimes to replace Fournier. So in that respect, yes, those could be considered bad contracts. We do have other ones. I don't think that Derrick Rose is a bad contract. There's only 1 year left on it, actually, next season. And Derrick Rose, if he's healthy, Derrick Rose is a winning player. I would say any team would be lucky to have Derrick Rose on it if Derrick Rose is healthy. Now, the next thing is, one thing, okay, this has potential to go all the way down to the wire towards training camp, because there's no urgency right now. Everyone's out of town. I guess, I don't know if I mentioned it before. I actually had to record this whole video again because my computer screwed up. So can't remember exactly what I said in the previous recording or what I'm saying now. But people are out of town. It's August. This is the first real off season that the NBA has had in almost 2 years. So, Danny Ainge is out of town. Who knows where Leon Rose is, but there hasn't been any talks in a couple of weeks, and that is completely understandable. Like we said, no urgency, but come when training camp starts approaching in September, things will start heating up. So it's really only about a month away. And time flies, my friends. Time flies. So this will be heating up pretty soon. But according to Tony Jones, he thinks this thing has all the potential to go all the way to training camp. However, he also said more. He said some more interesting things. He said that the Jazz, they can't worry about Donovan Mitchell being a distraction at camp or on the team itself. He said they can't give him away. They can't take pennies on the dollar. That's actually the words he used. Well, let me tell you something. 5 first-round picks plus, 2 of the 3 young players that we've been talking about. Actually, 2 of the 4 young players, because you can even talk about Cam Reddish as well. Those aren't pennies on the dollar. Those aren't just because, Minnesota way overpaid doesn't mean that the offer the Knicks are giving him is pennies on the dollar. In fact, taking a less substantial offer from another team like Miami, that would be taking pennies on the dollar. The Knicks have enough to give the Jazz what they need. They have it. It's just a matter of figuring out the right combination. The thing is, Danny is not liking Leon's position right now, which is he doesn't want to. He's made his offer. He doesn't want to make a mistake, but Danny wants to force Leon to blink. And how do you do that? By getting other teams involved. And then we heard that up to like 5 or 6 teams had contacted the Jazz. Teams like Atlanta, give me a break. What's Atlanta going to do? What do they have to trade? Nothing. What are they going to add Donovan Mitchell to the DeJounte Murray and Trae Young backcourt? What the hell is that? I mean, sometimes the stuff that we hear is just so ridiculous. You just got to take a break. Got to take a breath. So here's another thing that Tony said, which is interesting. He said, Danny, this could wait another year, or up until the trade deadline of next season, until another team maybe makes some moves and they acquire the draft package that Danny Ainge is looking for. So he's saying Danny could wait until other teams start stockpiling picks through little moves here and there that they're going to make, so that they can come and make a threat to the Knicks package. Well, that's a gamble. Not saying it's not impossible. Of course, it's possible. We've seen Pat Riley, work some magic down there for the Miami Heat. You never know. You never know. Likely? No. Very, very unlikely. Is it possible? Yeah, it's possible, but highly unlikely. The most likely scenario is if Danny doesn't make this trade before the season actually begins with the Knicks offer is probably going to get worse, because what's going to happen is the young guys for the Knicks are going to start playing on this team, and they're going to start delivering, and their value is going to start climbing. Hence, Danny Ainge's negotiating power is going to weaken. And imagine this. Why would Danny Ainge even for 1 second want to begin this season with Donovan Mitchell on his team when all he wants to do is tank for Wemby? That's right. He wants to, the 2023 draft is superb. And there are some outstanding players at the top of this draft that, Victor Wembanyama is considered to be a game changer, a franchise type player. That's who Danny wants. And if you have a guy like Donovan Mitchell on your team who can win you 3, 4, 5 extra games, maybe even 10 more games than you really want to, then it defeats your whole purpose. The whole purpose of unloading Rudy Gobert. So, don't talk to me about Danny can wait. Danny cannot wait. That is the sad reality of his situation that he's put himself in. There we go. He said they don't have to trade Donovan Mitchell. I could not disagree more. Now, the other interesting part that Tony talked about was Quentin Grimes. He said there's one player Knicks are trying to not put in the deal, and that is Quentin Grimes, that I mentioned before. He said under any circumstances, they don't want to trade him. Now, Jazz are hesitant to do a deal without Quentin Grimes. Knicks are amiable to the idea of trading Obi Toppin. This stuff feels a little bit like posturing. I feel like it, because we've heard a lot of rumors that if the minute the Donovan Mitchell trade happens, if Julius Randle is not part of that trade in a 3-team trade scenario like I just laid out there before, that the Knicks will find a taker for Julius Randle at some point very soon. So if you trade Obi and then you trade Randle, because Randle with Donovan Mitchell and Jalen Brunson, that's not going to work. Also with RJ on the team, it's not going to work. It's just, there's not enough ball. There's not enough balls for those guys. So Randle's going to have to fight, because remember, this is different than if Randle went to Lakers. If Randle went to the Lakers, he would accept his situation much, I would assume, he would accept his situation, his place on the hierarchy much easier than he will if he stays in New York. Right, even right now with Jalen Brunson, I'm not even sure how willing Randle will be to take a back seat to him. And then you, on top of that, give the other front row seat to Donovan Mitchell. I have a hard time believing that that's going to work. So Julius is gone if Mitchell comes. So if he's gone and then you traded Obi as part of the deal for Mitchell, what are we going to do at power forward? We're going to play Cam Reddish at power forward? That's not going to work. That's just not going to work. So I think that this like trying to hold on to Grimes, and meanwhile it's totally legitimate. Grimes is fantastic. I think he's going to be that, Klay Thompson, a B version of a Klay Thompson, B plus maybe, and like at this highest ceiling, which is pretty fantastic. But like we said, you have to give up something to get something in this, especially in the NBA. Absolutely, in any type of trade scenario. But I think they're trying to pump up Quentin Grimes' value so that the Jazz, when they make the deal, they take him and they leave Obi with the Knicks and IQ, possibly. And IQ. Even though IQ's role gets a lot murkier if Donovan Mitchell joins this team, IQ is a tremendous backup point guard. I think he should be the starting point guard on this team. I still believe it, even though Jalen Brunson has been brought on this team. I just know. I see what I see. I saw last year that Quentin Grimes was going to be something really interesting and special. He's turned into that. Unfortunately, he got hurt during that stretch when he could have been racking up numbers and really been performing for the Knicks on a high level. But it didn't work out that way. But we still know what Grimes is capable of. I believe that IQ has that ability as well. I really do. And I mean the on-off court numbers just tell the story. When IQ's on the court, everybody plays better. Everybody plays better. It's just the reality of what he contributes when he's on the floor. Now, one thing to bear in mind is interesting in terms of these deals. So, if Grimes is if Leon is holding on to Grimes so that it looks like, oh, okay, well, they don't want to give him up, then what else can we get from him? And at the last minute, Leon's comes in and he says, all right, we'll give you Grimes, but we're only going to give you 2 unprotecteds. You see, it's the levers that Woj was talking about. There could be some of that going on, which is totally legit. It's a good negotiating situation. Think about this too. When it came to the Gobert trade, Danny Ainge, he pushed hard for Jaden McDaniels in the Gobert deal. Per The Athletic, the Jazz ended up having to take more picks because the Timberwolves did not want to give up Jaden McDaniels in that deal. So Danny did cave, but he took more picks, and he got a nice amount of picks for Gobert for a player like him. So that's what's happening. That's the latest right there. Something out here to look at this. NBA Central posted this from Andy Blarson. The overwhelming feeling among league insiders is that Donovan Mitchell is likely to sign outside of Utah at the first available opportunity in 2025, per Andy Blarson. So Danny already knows the clock is a ticking. Donovan Spida is going to flee the state of Utah as soon as he possibly can. So at the end of his third year of his current contract, because I think the fourth year is a player option, he will definitely opt out and he will seek greener and better pastures. And this is who he is. According to the Hoops Hype, he is the second best shooting guard entering next season in the NBA, behind Devin Booker. Now, we can debate these lists left and right, whether he's the second best. It's neither here nor there. The point is, he is one of the best. I mean, how you can rearrange this order. I mean, first of all, what's DeJounte Murray even doing on this list? He's a point guard. So that kind of makes you scratch your head a little bit. And Tyrese Maxey. Okay. But there you go. Donovan Mitchell he's worth a lot. But is he worth meeting the price threshold that Danny Ainge has already invented in his mind? That's been distorted by the absurd deal that he got from the Minnesota Timberwolves. That answer, in my opinion, is no. All right. Well, thank you guys for watching this. Again, please subscribe, hit the thumbs up button for me, and drop your comments. I want to hear your thoughts about all of this. And I will see you around the Knicks-Verse.